Welcome. I'm James Snell, for those that don't know me. I'm with nearForm. I'm also a core contributor to Node. Wanted to organize a panel because I work on Node full-time. One of the common conversations that we're always having is kind of what is the back and forth or the interplay, or what is the kind of cooperation that exists between Node and the module ecosystem. And too often we find that there's really not enough communication going on, and folks in core don't necessarily know what the module ecosystem needs, and folks in the module ecosystem don't necessarily know everything that's going on in Node core. So we need to improve the communication channels. So I wanted to organize a panel. I have 3 individuals who contribute significantly to the ecosystem. I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of go from there. So we'll start with Maggie.
Hi, I'm Maggie Pint. I am one of the maintainers of Moment.js, and I am also the JS Foundation's delegate to TC39.
Hi everyone, I am Matteo Collina. I work with nearForm with James. You typically shout at me when you download readable-stream, so it's yes, that's me. Whenever you have a problem there, it's us making a mistake. Typically, we have the best Q&A system of the world, so we get very slapped very hardly in less than 5 minutes. So that's typically what I do, and I do maintain more than 250, between 250 and 300 modules or something like that. Right. I have the commit bit, the publish bit at least. Okay, I maintain a lot of other stuff. So.
Cool. Hi, I'm John David Dalton. I'm the lead of Lodash. I'm also a PM at Microsoft on web apps and frameworks on Edge.
Cool. So part of the reason why I invited the three of them is that just between Maggie and JD, just the number of downloads, just the number of users in the Node ecosystem that use their code. Moment was downloaded, I think, so far this month over 11 million times, just this month. Lodash just today was downloaded 1.9 million times. So, to kind of give an idea, the 3 of them represent a significant portion of just supporting the ecosystem in general. So just getting their insight on a number of things is critical. I have my phone here because I have my notes on here. So the overall theme that I have in mind here is what do module developers want Node Core to keep in mind? Just kind of as they're going through. We make all kinds of decisions. We can make all kinds of choices that impact the ecosystem. What are the types of things that we may not be doing too well to support the ecosystem? What are the things that we are doing very well? And then what are the things that we need to be keeping in mind as we're going through and doing these things? So given your experience, the first question I would have is, what are your priorities? So you're going through and maintaining these modules, right? What are your priorities for your users?
So for me, my priority is I try to follow the spirit of Semver, and I know that some people are very much against Semver, but it works. If you use the caret or the tilde, I want to make sure that I don't introduce something that will likely break your package if you depend on like Lodash. So I try to make sure that I restrict my major version bumps to at least just a year, give you 12 months of a package at a specific support range, and then support it for that. And then after that, I'll do a major bump and I will introduce breaking changes. And I will drop old versions of Node and things like that. So
right.
For me, following Semver and adhering to and being able to drop old support versions of Node is.
So this dropping old versions of Node, I know, Matteo, you have some thoughts on this. Matteo's fairly unique in that he's supporting an ecosystem, but he's also contributing to Node Core. So he's got this dual perspective. And we have these, some modules are looking at this right now. It's like, do we support, which versions of Node do we continue to support? 0, whatever, 4, 6. We're seeing a variety of different choices. Do you have any thoughts on this?
So yeah, that's a hard question, but so let me give you a little bit of a detail. you can install a readable stream, and all the streaming ecosystem on top of it, and it will all work on Node 06, 08, 011, 010 as well, maybe in the middle, 012, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and when it comes out, 9. Okay, and you will be able to run the latest version of the streams code that is in Node 9 when it comes out. Okay, this is very unique, and no, you should not do this. Okay, it's a massive source of headache. We got slapped in our face because we broke support for 0.11 - harmony. It was pretty bad. You know, a lot of people using still 0.11 - harmony. So my take in there, it depends on what you're doing. And there is a lot of people that have huge dependency chain. My module sits super deep in the dependency chain. And it's very hard to move people forward to new major releases of that. You know, probably something like that as well. And for me, it's, well, for at least the users that in the streams community we maintain, it's very important not to get that disruption, because when you start bumping a major, then you need to, and drop the old version of Node, you need to do you have a major snowball effect in our dependency chain. So I can't, we have a problem where we want to drop the support for the old version of Node, and we are a little bit tricky.
Are you tied to Node? Is this module?
Oh, no, that's actually a very nice question. Maybe, did you all hear?
I asked if his package was tied to Node, because I always assume it's pseudo-native.
No, it's not Node. It's all JavaScript. It runs in the browser. The IE 7 or 8, I don't know, something like that, something super ugly. It runs on React Native. It runs in some other weird places that I don't know about. Okay, right. So by releasing it, we broke Yarn twice. Okay, just to say.
Well, you know, it's one of the things. I mean, it's readable stream is a port of the stream support that's in core. So it actually makes it really difficult when we want to update, make significant code changes in core. We can't do that if it breaks readable streams, and readable streams has to continue to work on zero whatever. So there are significant changes we need to make in core, and there's new directions we want to go. Like when async iterators, you know, finally land in V8, and we can have those in core. There's a lot of interesting things we can do, except for readable streams. So.
I mean, one thing to keep in mind about versioning is that I sit in the position of actually being on TC39 looking at the language level, and we're in the position where we cannot version when it comes to the language, because there's really no good way to ensure that code is going to run in an environment where a feature is or is not available. But what it comes down to for TC39 is that we cannot deprecate anything. And if it works a certain way, then it must always work that way. And we end up saying at meetings a lot, like, don't break the web, don't break the web. It's said 100 times. That concern is really difficult to accommodate as you want to iterate over the programming language. It makes it so that anytime, you know, like one proposal that a lot of people are excited about right now is the question mark dot thing for null conditional. And we had to look at the proposal and go, do we want to use that syntax on that? Because once that syntax is used, it's gone, and it's gone forever. This isn't quite a Node thing, but the hard part about not quickly dropping versions and not being able to rev a major is that you actually start to lose flexibility. And that's something that we see very strongly at the language level. Right,
and I'm glad you bring this up. So you are involved with TC39 and working on Moment. And one of the things that you've been working on at TC39 is actually improving date handling support in the language. Thank God. Thank you. Date is horrible. So there's always been this tension with core, like this small core model, right? Where, you know, push as much functionality to user land as you can, keep it out of core, but you're actually involved in the opposite process, where you're taking stuff that does exist in user land and you're pushing it, you're skipping Node altogether and going directly to the language and pushing it there. Can you talk a little bit about the motivation? Because there is a cost, right? This thing is there, it's going to be there forever. right? But why is it important to push that, and how do we make the decision? And this is probably a question for you and JD. How do we make the decision of what stays in userland versus what needs to be part of the platform?
Yeah, so the problem is that I can't give you the blanket answer to that question. Like, how do we decide what goes in the language or into the platform versus what stays in userland? As general guidance, if 99% of people, the thing with date is that 99% of people need to do it. There are very few software applications that don't have some kind of date time code. And it turns out that the amount of code needed to handle date time properly, even take out the locale data and the time zone data that Moment provides and just look at date computations. The amount of code needed to do that properly and correctly is so large that like even that is a tax for developers, especially front-end developers. This is more a front-end development concern, where we can't ask every front-end developer ever to ship a date library with every front-end product that ever was. That's not reasonable in the era of the web that we have, where people want to load huge amounts of JavaScript to the browser, have it render instantly. Adding a datetime library, which is a pretty big, like Moment as a complete API, gzipped, is it 55K gzipped? And like we can't take a whole lot out. People say, well, can't you shake it and can't you get fewer code paths? And no. Sorry, something that you want won't be there anymore. So in this specific case, it has to do with the fact that 99% of people need it, and you can't ask every browser developer ever to ship it. Right. But I think TC39 as a whole is also going to look for how do we build abstractions that are useful for library authors. They're actually we're much more concerned about what abstractions are useful for library authors or enable library authors than we are about what enables userland, because the library authors are so helpful in moving things forward. So like one proposal that's kicked back and forth on TC39 is observables. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of other things in the language that allow people to implement observables in a lot of different ways. So as much as there's a strong call for language level observables, we're like, but you can make them if you need them. And of course, observables aren't a 99% case.
Right. So, I mean, talking about the library authors, JD, Lodash does a lot of stuff that a lot of people kind of view as like should be part of the language, but it's not. It does these additional things on top. So
yeah, I hear a lot of people say like, why not just add Lodash to the standard library? And it's because Lodash is opinionated in its own way, and you'll find another library that's opinionated in a slightly different way. Whenever you bake that into the language, the shortcuts that a library takes or the features that it may promote need to be well-rounded and robust in the language. And so a lot of times this thing that you think is so great, when you try to add it to the language, you end up, well, there's this edge case and that edge case, and there's a support case that you need to go back to like, you can't break the web, so there's some weird edge case there too. What I'm seeing though is that, I want to touch back on the date thing though. Not only is it a large chunk of code to ship, it's not easy to implement. Like you have to become a subject matter expert on dates, times, time zones. I hear y'all talk about it and I have no idea what's going on. Like it's so complex. Like I'm a utility library author, so I deal with arrays, strings, and objects. And that's so much easier than all of that stuff. So in Lodash's case, I like seeing things like, we have a method called get, and the existential operator, or whatever we're calling it now with that question mark dot, is essentially that method, but in syntax, and I love that, like do that. There's another proposal for a match syntax, which is an object, or a pattern matching syntax, which we have a method called match, which does something very similar to that. So again, like, if there's a pattern and you see libraries recreating this functionality over and over again, then it's a cue that maybe that syntax or the language should do a better job of enabling that, so you don't have to sit there and rewrite it. So I've got my eye on things like a deep clone, I would love to see like a structured cloning algorithm that's in the browser implementation. It's under the hood. I would love to see that like exposed, so we could use that. Deep object comparisons would be another one that you see used all the time. I was just talking to someone about Node has it implemented inside their assert library. Lodash has it implemented inside its library. QUnit has it implemented inside its library. Ava has it implemented too. So like it's just over and over again. You have to recursively crawl an object and compare values. Like the language should help provide stuff like that.
Right.
So,
We're on the language more than Node.
yeah.
Well, yeah, it's
Well, it leads back into like, should Node expose this, or should
Right.
Node push it to the
Right.
language to expose this?
well, and Node has its own things, just analogous. Like we were talking out in the hallway about, Node has IC, which is the internationalization code. And it has a huge amount of functionality that is not necessarily, it's not defined as part of the language. There's some parts there, but we can't actually enable all of it, because if we did, it would double the size of the Node binary, and we have a bunch of people that are just like, no, we don't want that, especially IoT developers who have very small footprints. So we have this back and forth. Do we add this functionality in, because internationalization stuff is really hard to do, right? And but a lot of people need to do it, so we can provide it. But what makes the most sense? And this raises a very important question. Is in core, we always have these decisions, like when we talk about, when we add something new, is that going to disrupt userland or not, right? If we, like HTTP2, when we added that, it was just like, well, there's userland libraries, what's going to be the impact on those? And it's like, well, this really does belong in core, so hopefully the people that are using those, will be able to get on board with it, but there's always an impact. So the question would be, as we are going through and making the decisions to add something to core, right? Is that actually a disruption to userland, or is it something that is like, okay, we can just adapt and move on, right? Or adapt this?
I would like to make a very, very simple example about this. So we received a contribution in core that I reviewed and I landed. And it was a very simple one about changing the writable property on the HTTP response. Okay, this is, and for some reason that property was staying true even after the thing was not writable anymore. And some people on a contributor went out and sent out a fix, and we landed it. It seems such a very good idea at that point in time. Turns out that more or less we broke error handling for a good chunk of the applications out there that were actually relying on the fact that that property was staying true. And all of this is very hard. Okay, all of this is very, 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 very hard to predict and to assess. Even projects like Canary in the Gold Mine helped track this, but from time to time these things are not even tracked in the Canary. Okay,
Right.
if you don't know what Canary in the Gold Mine is, check it out. It's fantastic.
It's ecosystem testing. We run, anytime we want to make a change to Node, a significant change to Node, we run the tests for major ecosystem modules to make sure that we're not breaking them. So it's smoke testing for the ecosystem. It's fantastic.
I think those are kind of hard to avoid. I mean, you'll run into that in platform code as well, in browser as well. They'll make changes that they think are trivial, and then it ends up impacting a wider audience. But there's other changes like ES module support that have been telegraphed for years now, like the intent to ship modules and how to do that with a file extension. And
A not very popular file extension.
hey, but I think that kind of feedback is useful though, because it lets Node know that there is pushback, and it allows things like, now there's a module loader proposal that's got a pull request in Node that's, I think, been approved or in the process of
Yeah,
being
it's in the
approved,
process,
which then allows devs to customize that behavior. But if there wasn't that kind of communication and that back and forth, then likely that kind of flexibility would not be introduced. So I think they've handled that well, and the fact that there's been such a long lead time there that you could see it coming and get the feedback, and it's wearing on the implementers because it's a lot of circular conversations, and a lot of people are just now finding out about ESM and about the file extension, and so you have the exact same conversation again, but progress is being made there. So I think that has been pretty good. I would say that a lot of times there's a goal in mind for Node, and Node will see things like ESM is great. We need to conform to the browser, but you need to think about what you're taking away and what you're going to replace it with.
Right.
So for example, right now CommonJS has these really handy dir name, file name environment variables. They just exist. You can grab your file name and your dir name. But in ESM land, that does not exist. And the proposal there is to use import.meta.url, but in order to get the dir name, it's non-trivial to parse the URL. So then you have to create another library function to do that.
I know we have a URL parser in core now, so you can use that.
But even then, that parses the path name, but then that doesn't unencode the path name, and then that doesn't put the path name's delimiters. And so it's just something to think about. Like, okay, so you basically want to say, hey, use this new thing, but don't saddle it down with so many disincentives that it's not worth migrating over.
And a lot of people view MJS as a disincentive.
Yeah.
So
I guess this is a slightly different perspective than JD's, but for the moment team, at least with the module situation, we got to the point about, I think it was about a year ago now, with module loaders and the various methods for the loading of modules in JavaScript, where we created a label called loading. And we would put it on any issue about module loading, and then we would simply say, contact maker of module loader. Like, we no longer support thinking about module loading, just tell us what to do. An oddly effective strategy that involved like the System.js people showing up and Sean Larkin showing up and people being like, for my thing, and the roll-up team showing up, and all of them being like, for my thing, the way you do it is this way. And it does actually work now. Moment loads pretty much everywhere. But for us, all we really wanted, from us to Node Core was like, just tell us what to do.
a way, yeah.
Like, just tell us the solution, because the churn around here is not helping us.
So the kind of the thing that I'm hearing, and I've heard it from other places, is that yes, that adding things to core and changing things in core is going to have an impact. Everyone recognizes that. It's giving plenty of communication, explaining what those, how, what is the method, what is it going to be, with enough advance notice they can actually adapt to it. Is that thing? Okay.
I would like to add a quick thing. More or less, I work on as you probably guessed, on the other spectrum of the new stuff that these two fantastic person work. From somebody that maintains some popular modules that needs to work kind of everywhere, it's don't break me. Like, don't make my life impossible to support whatever platform I need those modules to run into.
And an example of this is we're currently going through errors in Node Core and assigning a static code to every error. And streams is like the last one because it actually breaks readable streams. Backwards support because down-level browsers handle custom error objects differently to the point where we can't just attach a new property in a consistent way. So
do that in IE 8.
It's painful. It's yeah.
Or 9, or 10, or 11. Okay, I don't know 11.
Is anyone here using any Node version lower than 4? 1. What version are you on? 0.10 or yeah?
I am not surprised. I am definitely not surprised. Thank you. I'm not surprised. I call myself a node archaeologist at this point.
It's going to be his official title at nearForm is the node archaeologist.
I throw a const in there just to pull everyone up to Node 4. Right.
That's nice.
We did that. We did. At some point, we slipped a const in readable stream,
And it broke everybody.
It was hell. So,
So-
I'm not. Yeah.
So Matteo contributes to Node Core, so he's always there. But Maggie and JD, I mean, you've been kind of around the periphery of. I think you've been involved in some conversations, but I don't think the two of you have contributed directly to Node Core. What is your impression of the project and kind of like how it is supporting the ecosystem?
So today I got my first commit added to Node Core. So I'm technically
Now you are.
one little commit, but I'm technically now labeled a contributor.
Okay, Rich, do you have a pin? The Code and Learn pin? You need to get it to JD.
Yeah.
Okay. all right.
So I used to say, so Node's been around for a while, like 2009 or something. And I used to say, like, I would keep Node Core at arm's length because Node was a very small and tight group. And I felt like there was no way to make changes to it. It was really hard as an outsider to make contributions. But that has changed over the years. It has gotten better. Even now, even if there's rough spots now, like people will pull up on the side and say like, hey, well, let's work through this issue or that issue. So it's becoming a lot more approachable.
Right.
I think as more contributors and as Node's popularity has increased, that has kind of softened the tone and the attitude of contributors or core. And you see this in other libraries too. So like back in the day, MooTools had a very similar kind of thing where they were known as being kind of rough at the time to new contributors, and then over time they softened.
Right.
So yeah, I'd say like now it's getting better. I mean, like I did land my first commit, so that was pretty exciting.
Cool.
This airs out of the technical, and perhaps this brings up a hard topic, but James and I have talked about this before personally. I think the biggest thing that's concerning to me about Node that I would really like to see changed is just the level of maturity of dialogue, especially in social media.
Yeah.
I think that it's really hard to want to be involved in a project when sometimes the dialogue isn't at the level that I would like it to be at.
Right.
And honestly, that more than anything is probably a barrier to me wading more into that space.
Right. Yeah, I'd say Kim's talk this morning. Once it's available, Kim Clayton's talk this morning, I'll be watching that over and over and over again because I think it was fantastic. I recommend that for everybody. If you missed it, definitely watch it. So yeah, I think that's definitely fair. We're running short on time, so one more question for Matteo. All right.
Hey.
So as both a core contributor, module developer, what can core be doing better to improve its support for the ecosystem?
This is a very, like, being both sides, it's a tricky question.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I doing my job? Am I doing my job?
Right.
So the biggest thing is, there is need. Most of the time, there is the need of breaking changes, and mostly because there are some very legacy part of our code that also I maintain as Trim 1.0.6. So that have been there since forever, and as more of these new language features become available, and it's now possible to use them with this old construct. Okay, given that I write a lot of modules and stuff like that, I'm really scared about having true velocity type of situation where there is a new bunch of modules and module authors that move to only support the latest version of Node because it supports those language features. And
Tempted to do that with arrow functions.
but arrow function is still good. Like arrow function is still 4+, so I'm grand. Okay, it's
Like await.
Sorry.
Async await is a good one. Yeah.
that's not 7.0. It's
7.6.
7 points. Yes, that's
Yeah.
it's that's more or less the that's the deal.
Async iterators will be another one when they hit.
Sync
everyone's
iterators
gonna
when
wanna
they
jump.
land become another one. So for somebody that typically had to, when maintains module in the deep dependency chain and it has problems in bumping the major because otherwise people will not follow, making sure that when we introduce the new feature in core, we introduce them in a way that is still possible to write software that works on both worlds. One good example for this was the util.promisify function that we shipped in 8.
Yeah.
And when we shipped that, we also released a module on NPM that was using that same thing, but was also compatible with 4 and 6.
Didn't know that.
We didn't communicate, so one thing we need to do is communicate.
It's better communication, yeah.
Okay, that's
Lot of
a
mirroring.
good thing. Tick. Okay, we
Write that down.
got good feedback. Okay, it was done by Anna. So
Yeah.
No, I think it was done in collaboration with Anna. I think by Julian. I don't know, whatever. I
Right.
don't remember. Anyway, there was a module being done with the exact same API to be able to do it in the other platform.
At the same time, we're also working right now on actual real Promisify FS support. There's an open PR right now that I was working on where we have it's not a wrapped API, what util Promisify gives you, it's a promises-based FS API, which is going to be...
As I said, my problem in all these new features is that as more modules start to use them, and they want just to use them because they're better, come on, okay? Like I'm not saying that they're not great, okay? Those new language features are great and fantastic.
But it has a cost.
But from a maintainer point of view, the cycle comes more or less with the Node.js LTS cycle, which is 3 years. So, if to clarify this, because this was not clear to everybody, so I just want to make this statement. Node 4 is supported till April 2018. Node 6 is supported to April 2019. So we got to live with those things, okay? And there are businesses and things that are relying on some of the modules that we maintain, and we need to, this is what scares me now from all these new language features that are coming, that more and more modules we just want to use the latest
things, right.
and the greatest, and forget because it costs too much, and I understand them completely. So they are right to some extent. So, well, I don't have so much time to do maintenance, so I just want to support the best language features. But at the other time, if I depend on that module, it means that I won't get update anymore for that module. And I need to stop supporting those old versions.
Right.
And everything, there is a snowball effect in the community. So that's the thing that scares me most when you open a PR about having a sync, the file system, the file promisify fast bits, and when I see to do those features, because and there will be no easy polyfill for that stuff. Okay, so what will happen is might create a true velocity type of situation. So that's what scares me most.
Well, thank you. We are out of time. We're 4 minutes over, so I really appreciate you coming down and helping have the conversation. If anyone has any questions, you mind sticking around for a few minutes, and folks can come up and ask questions. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.